Hi everyone, thank you very much for having me. My name is Victor Sanchez. I'm the current president of the United States Student Association here in the United States. So a big hello to all my comrades out there in the European Union of Students. Here to talk to you a little bit about the crisis here in the United States. To understand it, I think one, it's important to really kind of get that this is not something that just started in 2008 with the economic crisis here in the U.S. It's a much larger systemic issue that we've had in terms of the overall funding of our institutions of higher learning. But to really get it, you have to look at it as a trend that did start back in the 1980s, where state governments, because the way higher education is funded here in the U.S. is very state-based, the federal government has a very limited role in terms of what it does for funding our institutions of higher learning. And although it's limited, it's very important because they play a big factor in terms of financial aid and financial assistance to our students to go into these institutions of higher learning. But, again, to understand, state governments will then give funding to institutions of higher learning, who subsequently will set cost of attendance levels based on the level of funding that they receive, in which case the federal government will also contribute in the form of financial aid. States oftentimes have their own grant aid programs that they provide, and so on and so forth. But what we've seen is that there's been a trend of state disinvestment at our institutions of higher learning, which have subsequently caused them to make up that deficit gap by raising tuition and cost of attendance. And with that, you have the federal grant aid program that would have normally helped subsidize a large proportion of that also be subsequently cut and reduced. And so in the last 20 years, we've seen a trend of cost of attendance skyrocketing, grant aid programs leveling off in terms of their support, and a large gap that has kind of been created. That gap is what we now call the student loan debt gap. On average, right now, we currently have students graduating with $25,000 in debt. It's a pretty big amount of debt to be graduating in. We like to say we're graduating with mortgage-sized loans and no homes. But overall, right now, the crisis, it is defined by skyrocketing costs of attendance at our institutions, low levels of funding, the consolidation of departments, the elimination of overall majors, right, and this enlarged bubble around student debt that we're trying to fight for here in the United States. And so, as USSA, we believe that education is a right and not a privilege, and unfortunately what we're seeing is that our institutions of higher learning here in the U.S. are becoming more and more of a privilege instead of this idea of equal opportunity for all. So I'd be more than happy to send you all some more materials. I look forward to hopefully meeting some of you someday, but if not, please be sure to forward all of your questions over to us, and I'm sure the facilitators of this meeting will have our contact information to follow up with. Thank you very much, and have a great meeting.